Welcome back to Design Santa Barbara. Today I'm talking with African art expert Ron Atwood. Ron, thank you for being here again. Tell me about Africa and avant-garde.
Well, it raises a big question that's better understood, frankly, in Europe because that's where it's all started, in Paris, during the early part of the 20th century. The early avant-garde artists, as they were called, and we know them because they've now become famous, Picasso, Matisse, Modigliani, Giacometti. These were some of the big names. Not then, they mostly lived in poverty, but now their things sell for millions of dollars. What's interesting, Michael, is that without African art, and this is what people don't know, that never would have happened. African art was catalytic in influencing the styles of those artists. And we've got some of the pieces in front of us right now that in fact reflect that stylistic influence. Let's start with the most widely known person. Most people know that African art influenced Picasso.
Picasso.
That's right. And what you have down here is exactly the kind of piece that in fact did influence him when he went to the Trocadero Museum in Paris, the Musée de l'Homme, and he saw pieces like this in front of him in a case. And this face was an inspiration to Cubism. And Picasso produced the Demoiselles d'Avignon, 5 female figures, 3 of them with African kinds of faces. And this is where that inspiration came from, to Picasso. This has 2 sides. This is what's sometimes called the male side, and interestingly, it is a Janus figure. And on the back is actually the kind of piece that Picasso was able to see at the Trocadero Museum.
Interesting.
And was the inspirations for so much of his work. Okay, we started with Picasso. But Picasso, before he got started, knowing nothing of African art, was encouraged by a friend of his who was also a competitor, Henri Matisse. And a kind of piece that influenced Matisse and inspired his creation of a portrait he did of his own wife, showing her with a white face. And what inspired Matisse were very well-known masks at that time that came from Africa, the Punu masks from Gabon, one of the most influential tribes or peoples on the avant-garde movement, especially appealing to Parisians who love beauty. What you don't see here, only remnants remaining, are the white that was originally all over that whole mask. White. What did it represent? Actually, the ghost of a beautiful young maiden. And they were danced, believe it or not, on stilts. A dancer with costume flowing down 10 feet above the crowd, and this white mask, the ghost of a beautiful woman. All right?
Amazing.
That's one thing. Now, what about Cubism? I mentioned Cubism. This is naturalism, really. Cubism is something different. You notice that this particular mask in the center has 2 things going for it. One, by the way, it is an elephant mask, and some of you may realize that when you see what's on the side. That is an elephant's trunk. But look at that cutting angle there. That's the angularity of Cubism. It's combined in African art with something very beatific. Look at the face. That's a Valentine's heart-shaped face, Michael. And that heart-shaped simplicity, the beauty of the heart-shaped face, was one of the most important influences on all of the avant-garde artists. Many of them used that simple heart-shaped face. What's another tribe that did it? This happens to be from Gabon, from the Kwele people. Here you have the Punu, now you have the Kwele. These tribes came from the region of what was then Gabon, one of the most influential areas on the avant-garde movement. And you will see that there's a similarity between this mask and its heart-shaped face and the one down there and its heart-shaped face. That is also a Kwele mask from Gabon. And there you see more of the curves, curvilineal, But this face is the same as that. And that identifies the tribe. That's how we identify African art, by tribe. Or you might say groups of people. Because sometimes when we say the word tribe, we have too primitive an idea. There are 20 million approximately Yoruba people, one of the biggest tribes in Nigeria and overlapping into Benin. So when we say tribe, we're talking about something the size of New York or more, okay? So we've got to be a little careful when we use those kinds of words. I'm going to close this by pointing out the two pieces that are on either side there. These are tall Senefo. Here's the woman, there's the man. And these, with that tall mottled finish, some of the viewers will realize the person being influenced was Giacometti.
Giacometti.
And you will see Giacometti's sculpture, the famous tall, sinuous statues with this mottled iron surface.
Yes.
Here you have them and the influence itself on the actual African pieces. One of the things that we might want to know here in terms of the purpose is that this is the primordial couple. This is Adam, this is Eve. And in African art, Eve, if we put them next to each other, is actually a little taller. There is the honoring of the importance. Yeah, thanks, Michael. The honoring of the importance of women is shown symbolically in the difference, which is slight but real. She is taller.
She's taller.
That's part of the authentication of a genuine primordial couple from the Senefo people. You don't forget, if you're the sculptor, to make the woman a little taller, and I'm sure that female viewers will enjoy that fact. So we honor the female in African art. This is something that a lot of people don't realize, that the female is present even in patriarchal societies. And we need to give more honor to that in our own society.
Absolutely.
That importance.
It's fascinating, fascinating. So there's one more thing I want to ask you. It is, what is the most important thing about African art that you want people to know that most don't know?
Exactly. What people mostly don't realize is that African art, as I just was alluding here and showed you with that example of the quelle, is classical art. It's not folk art. The most important thing is to realize you're dealing with classicism in African art. That's not the normal concept. Oh, I thought it was just folk art. So that's the most important thing, is to give dignity to peoples who are often called primitive, when in fact they are not.
They're not.
Their civilizations go back as early as any other. We all came from Africa. In fact, we are all brothers and sisters under the skin, and we are African. That's where we came from.
Wonderful. Could not have said it better. Thank you.
Thanks.
Stay tuned. After the break, Ron and I will be talking about something that's always interesting, the world of auction, and how African art is bought and sold.